Good morning. A fabulous Saturday, March the 6th. We are resuming with Titan Talks, and this morning is going to be an epic kickoff. We have a lot of new game-changing personalities with us this morning, and we will get to that very shortly. But let me just answer this question I've been getting a lot of. Why Titan Talks? Melissa, why? What is this about, And I would say this. As the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, has said, and I respect this woman so greatly, we are all Caribbean citizens. We are responsible for curating our own stories. We are actually like the pepper sauce, the pizzazz, the effervescence in most global circles. Our diaspora can be found in Fortune 500 companies in the creative sector internationally. We are and have been a part of magical moments globally. Titan Talks aims to assist with the storytelling, specifically in the entrepreneurship and the sporting industries in the Caribbean and its diaspora. Now, who is a Titan? Well, in my humble opinion, it is any individual who is aiming daily to maintain the balance between four pillars: mindset, health set, soul set, and business set. They are aware that they are children of God and they have a specific purpose on this planet. They also know that they accomplish nothing of consequence by themselves. Now, on that note, I would love to introduce my co-host, Christopher George, an Olympian, a barrister, and an engineer. He is also a versed swimmer and involved in water polo. Both are second nature to him. I could almost say that he could even walk on water. Now, Chris, I'm going to hand over to you. Take it over.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I want to thank you tremendously. About a month and a half ago when you came to me in the gym and we had a discussion about what this was, I sensed your excitement. And, I was like, this is a woman that I have to follow, So I want to thank you tremendously for the lead on that. So I would want to introduce Mr. Brian A. Courtney Lewis. I would first want to start off with a little bit of philosophy. I think that Mr. Lewis, our guest speaker here today, exudes a certain quality, and I think Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, said it best. He wrote that a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. And I think that quote adequately captures the word resilience. Brian Lewis is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, TTOC, and the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, CANOC. He has 32 years experience in the sports leadership and has established a reputation as a creative and insightful thought leader. Prior to assuming the presidency of the TTOC, Lewis served on several committees, including marketing and finance, and worked hard to secure sponsorship opportunities. A strong advocate for diversity and gender equality, the TTOC launched the Future is Female program under his leadership, which champions and advocates for gender equality at all levels of Olympic and Commonwealth sport in Trinidad and Tobago. Lewis holds an executive master's degree in sports organization management, MIMOS. And I want to add in a little bit of a personal note. When I came to Mr. Lewis in 2013 or thereabouts, when I was in my fledgling stages of going to the Olympic Games in 2016, he looked at me and the first statement that Mr. Lewis told me, it's like, Christopher, what is it that you need? That was it. And he said, I have faith in you. I know who you are. I know what you've done, and I will give everything. And he was instrumental in my journey to the Commonwealth Games in 2014, the Pan American Games in 2015, and ultimately the Olympic Games in 2016. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. Brian Lewis here today, our guest speaker. Yes, sir. Mr. Lewis, well, I think that we just lost him there. I think we're getting some technical difficulties.
Maybe we speak about, I know that the conversation that we had in the gym.
Yes.
Mentioned about resilience, and let's just come back to you right now. You know, that journey that you had, Christopher.
Yes.
Yet that role that you just explained, you know, you said that, I read about, of course, in order for you to become the Olympian representing Trinidad and Tobago on the world stage, you had to give up your day job as an engineer.
Yes.
Can you explain that? How were you able to even make that decision?
So I think centrally, what you have to have this faith in yourself. You know, I will again lean on philosophies like intention and purpose. You speak about it. I think it's something that is divine and something that is a spark that all of us have. Once it is that you have that intention and purpose, you first start with unselfish action and also humility. So one of the things that I did is I had conversations with people that I deeply trusted. I talked about Mr. Lewis as one. My father, Brian George, was another. My mother, my brother. So centrally, my family. And then you take these steps and you recognize that any journey takes time. You know, it takes temperance, it takes courage. And those were some of these steps. So again, one of the things that I struggle with a bit, because there was no other individual that went to the Olympics before in the sport of judo, is how exactly do you do it? So it's a little bit of self-discovery, and then also discovery in things that other people may not know. And in spite of individuals not knowing those particular things, having the tenacity to step forward in courage, you know, and I think that that in itself is resilience in a nutshell. And a central aspect about it is this thing that you talked about, you know, walking with a divine purpose, walking with God, having faith in the process, and also loving everything that happens to you. Because when there are certain instances where I thought that my journey had gone absolutely left, and those were actually things that I needed to do to step forth. One situation that I would think about is when, and Brian Lewis was instrumental in this. So in 2013, I had a conversation with him. And then the next month I got sent to Scotland. And I thought, wait a second, how am I going to make it to the Commonwealth Games? How am I going to make it to the Olympics if it is that I'm out of Trinidad? Thankfully, I started training with a judo club in Aberdeen, which introduced me to the national Scottish national team down in Edinburgh. And guess what? The Commonwealth Games was in Glasgow, Scotland. So so I remember conversations that I was having, and I think Mark Littrian, my coach down in Trinidad, and Jesus Chavez, two of my coaches. And then Brian was like, Chris, you're already there. We don't even need to fly up. So, you know, so God kind of puts you in a place, and it's just for you to do the work and the things that are outside of your control, willing acceptance. And those were a couple of things that I thankfully had Brian, who gave me, you know, some of the support. You know, some of it is financial, some of it is spiritual, some of it is, you know, all the things in between. You know, and I'm hoping that Brian could come in and fill in. Yes. But you know, that was one of the things that that helped me tremendously on my journey.
You know, before we had the call this morning, before we came live,
Yes.
you mentioned that you started your day early, and you
Yes.
had a full day before this call starting at 9 a.m. You know,
Yes.
that recognition of a morning ritual that sets you up for the day. Let's go one time. Back to Brian. Let's waste no time.
Back to Brian. Yes. So Brian, I was actually telling the audience a little bit of my history with you and that conversation that we had circa 2012, 2013, where you told me, Chris, anything that you need, you just have to do the work. We'll get you to the Olympics. You know, so I suppose that from my personal story, you've been instrumental, and I actually want a little bit of an update. I know that you've been dealing with you know, the difficulties of going to the Olympic Games this year. So on you.
Well, first off, I'm not even going to apologize. I think it's an excellent start this morning, believe it or not. Titan Talks, I really appreciate the opportunity. And if we ever had to define in an actual perspective resilience, this was it. The fact that I've gotten back on, because you know Murphy's arrived at the door of Olympic House, and I give thanks to Mark, who under pressure figured out what to do. So I'm kind of hoping that at Murphy will give me a little break here. But you know, I've growing up in Belmont, I have to start from there, start from somewhere, because we have to keep it rolling. And I mean, there's no perfect example of resilience and how you bounce back from adversity, failures, mishaps, mistakes. And I can't reinforce that. It's so interesting that the concept of what we're talking about this morning, we had all these mishaps. So you have to actually have to walk the talk this morning, you know, and not get overly put out. You know, like I remember you mentioned, so I was going to say, growing up in Belmont, single parent, my mother, I use that as that. My mother left, the nice word now is gender-based violence, back then the domestic violence situation, to bring up her 4 children. And we had challenges because of that. And I had to learn very early, and we all had to learn growing up in Belmont at that time. The word my mother used wasn't resilience. I guess maybe it was too big a word, or if she didn't feel that. The word she used was bounce back. And she always drilled in us, life is going to be a series of bounce back. Because she didn't call it Murphy's Law then. She simply said, whatever could go wrong will go wrong, and the great thing about it, it never goes wrong at the right time, otherwise it wouldn't be go wrong, right? So the concept of bounce back has always been fundamental to my philosophy in life. Like everybody else, you would have made mistakes. You know, I had a great dysfunction because in my life, I having passed for Fatima somehow from Belmont Boys RC,
Brian, I won't hold it. I won't hold it against you as a QRC boy. You know.
I know, right? I know, right? You know, you had to walk to school and various things. And one of the big chips on my shoulder was I was always getting in trouble for not doing my homework. And the reason why at times I didn't do my homework was because Pythagoras' theorem, as I always say, was above my mother's pay grade, right? I had no father around. Belmont at that time was, you know, mixed working people across the road, was a drug pusher at the time. He couldn't help me with my Pythagoras theorem and geometry. And so not doing homework became a default position. I even remember at times when things was particularly tough that I would get a cup of warm water for breakfast. My mother said the stomach wouldn't know the difference. She'd give me enough money to buy a dinner mint in the tuck shop, Miss Campbell in Fatima. And she told me the mint will cut the gas. And when I reached home, she'd ask if you have homework. I'd say, yeah. She said, okay, go and sleep. The best remedy for hunger is sleep. Now, it wasn't every month, so I'm not going to paint a picture as if it was every day in the month, but of course, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that 4 children, single parent, working as a telephone operator, there will come a times in a month when the focus has to be on the younger one. So if she looks around and she will look at her eldest and say, all right, you know, you have to do duty today.
So yeah, so you were the eldest. I didn't actually know this piece of the story. So you were the eldest out of your siblings. So you were the eldest out of your siblings.
Yes, I was the
eldest
out of 4. I was the eldest picnic.
Yes. Yes. And what did you so you not only had the responsibility of or these issues with school, you were like the leader, and you had to be, I guess, a good positive male energy for your younger.
Well, let me be honest with you. My mother was the leader. That's where my advocacy for females and women and stuff. My mother is my absolute hero, right? It's unfortunate that the ravages of Alzheimer's. So there are many things she's not aware of. I know that, you know, as I said, I had some dysfunctions, and I mean, I like to be honest with people, because sometimes people see you and don't understand the backstory and why you may be driven by certain things. And what I believe my life experiences have always put me in a position to share and mentor and talk to people about bounce back. And as I said, I'm going to use that word. I love the theme, but the reality is that resilience means different things to different people, based on your different experiences, different things. And that the process of teaching resilience, there are a lot of good programs here in Trinidad and Tobago. One of them is Dr. Sophia Mohammed SISU program, which is excellent, and I recommend it. But I find sometimes when we get into the conversation of resilience, people narrow the focus on it. Resilience can't mean the same to me that it means to you or others, because everybody have their different life experiences, their different cross to bear, their different pain and pressure points, especially when you're involved in sport. Because on and off the field.
I want to ask you a question, since you brought up that. What, you know, I see you now, and obviously, you know, Mr. Lewis, I know you in not at the beginning, but now, and I see a certain level of tenacity and confidence. Where, I mean, I understand the resilience point, but I do suppose, where did this confidence, like, how did you, because I think it's something that you need to fuel, you know, you need to build upon each other. And I didn't recognize, you know, I see your CV, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, Brian's been doing stuff. Like, where did the confidence to make the step, or the courage to make the step, come from for you specifically?
Right. So it's part of the story. So again, if I don't drop little snippets in, the dots can't connect, right? So as I said, I had this dysfunction, this chippishness on my shoulder. And then, of course, Belmont at that point in time was very activist, social activist, Black Power, steel ban, everything. So Che Guevara, all the elder boys who not involved in Black Power, who not involved in different things, the Che Guevara, Fidel Castro. So it was that kind of anti-establishment kind of vibe, right? So I would have, so anyway, I do like to get into it. Let me put it this way. One day my mother came to me and she said to me, she said, "You are my eldest son. I will always love you. I'll always be there for you." And she watched me straight in the eye and she said, "You know, but I have my ears to the ground, right? So it will either be when you come out of jail, or I will bury you."
Oh, wow.
And she walked off. right?
How did you feel then?
And all I will say is that that is when I made a commitment. You know, I watched a studied boy. I have these younger brothers and sisters. My mother trying so hard, and I decided at that point to take the road less traveled and to honor my mother's bounce back. And
was it a specific instant? Can you remember like a specific scenario? Because I know that these things kind of come to a crescendo sometimes, you know, where you need to make a decision and then there's this tipping point and you're like, this,
right.
can you get to that?
Right.
Is there a specific one?
If what?
Is there a specific tipping point? Is there a specific
Yes, that was the tipping
instance?
point. When I the
Yeah.
euphemism, right, about the
Yes.
road less traveled is that I was making at-risk choices
Yes.
and doing things that would, in her mind, and would lead me down a road that was those were the only two outcomes.
So Brian,
So she insisted that little talk put me on the road to having a bigger purpose, right?
so what is the first thing that you actually changed when that spark went off? It was like, wow, I'm going to be buried.
What?
What did you
Right. No. I just smiling and I said because I played a little bit. Not the first decision I had to make was stop doing wrong things.
Right.
Stop using not having a father and all these things and stop, you know, just living up to at the point in time what people may have thought youth from Belmont do.
So you were actually break the mold. You were breaking the Belmont mold in a sense and creating your own.
You know, I'm not playing with words. No, it wasn't breaking the Belmont. But of course, I've had friends who have done well. I had friends who didn't do well. But it wasn't breaking the Belmont mold. I think it was getting back to Jennifer Lewis's mold.
Okay.
Right? You know, that wasn't her mold. Her life was an example to us of bounce back.
Right.
And
yes.
she couldn't be out here struggling to make a better life for her 4 children and an idiot son, eldest son, who she would look for to take some of the pressure and be an example, was contributing to her stress because he was feeling sorry for himself and was hitting back and hitting out.
Yes.
And not focusing on the effort that she was making, the good things that was happening at Paths for Fatima. I was enjoying sports and I had a choice. So what it did was very early at that point take away the excuse or excuses and that kind of that is what people see now in that I work very hard. If I believe in something, I go after it. I also believe in supporting youth and young people because Melissa and Christopher and Chantel and others, what I have learned in life is that if you lack something somewhere, there's a higher power that's good. You'll get something else under which you can use. It could be talent, it could be a gift for something to make something of yours.
Yeah. 1 second, Brian. We just I think you just went on mute, so you need to unmute yourself. Yes. So the one thing is, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, Brian. So you know, I'm sensing what it is that you're saying, and we are now coming down to the last 5 minutes of the
time flies.
A allotted time. Yeah, time flies. You know, I mean, I want to say, I love this quote by Nietzsche. You know, that you want nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, and not in all eternity. And what it seems that you've done is you've bared what is necessary, right? And you've taken it and molded it for yourself. That's actually, I found, because I didn't know that piece of your story, it actually adds this hue of color, and I'm like, oh, that is tremendous. It's like, you should write a book. I think it's, Belmont Boy to president of the TTOC.
I see that.
The book is coming. The book is coming. Yes. I think, Melissa, I don't know if it is that we have anyone you wanted to open it up for questions specifically for Brian, if anyone.
Listening. I mean,
yeah.
If you have a man like Brian Lewis on, sure somebody in the group must have a question.
Yes, if anyone who is logged in has a question, I think that there are a few attendees.
I have a question in the meantime. So Brian,
right, sure.
I know that you studied and you got into sports management, but what was your end point into sports management, or the path taken to actually get to this point?
My big mouth. I am. It's so funny. As I said, I'm very trippy. I mean, I'm very in your face, right? So I've kind of learned to moderate it now because you realize that So what happened was that how I got into it was that I at one point left the oil field, evolved into insurance, and I was doing pretty okay. And a good friend of mine, Ramesh Marad from Belmont, had asked me to sponsor some bodybuilding competition, right? Some classes in bodybuilding. And I went to this show and I was complaining about this, and at that time I found it was decent money I was putting out. And because we grew up together, he got annoyed, right, in the debrief. And he said to me, I remember that we were talking, he said, listen, if you feel you have all the answers and you feel you could do a better job, come on board. And it was so funny, right? He was the PRO, right? So he said, come on board, but you'll have to be my assistant PRO, right? And we were friends. I said, cool, no problem. I don't want your job. And I started. So I became first I'm distracted by a question from Diana Henderson. Really important question.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into sports admin, even competing on, Douglas Camacho invited me to be part of a slate for TTOC in 1997, and here I am. So, but I know we have time and the question. Yeah.
So Diane Henderson asked for either myself, but I will ask Brian to answer this. What would you suggest to young athletes of how to stay hopeful and focused based on your story that you've just kind of told us, Belmont boy to president of the TTOC, and forging ahead? What is something that you would suggest in the circumstance?
In not only to young athletes,
like a good snippet, a good takeaway, like somebody can implement in their life right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, have a purpose. Mm-hmm. Even if you're participating in sport and you want to be an Olympic champion, it's more than that. As Christopher, any of our top athletes will tell you, it's very easy to give up, to quit, if it's just that hard. It has to mean something inside of you. And I always tell young people, it don't matter what your age, look deep into yourself, all right? And find the purpose. And another important point is listen to your voice. Listen to that voice, because there's a lot of voices will be talking to you, but there's a voice that will tell you, I love judo, I love this because I just passionate and love it. I love hockey. Go with that. And that one thing I find will help you overcome a lot.
I have one. Brian just said it. Most of us look externally for that answer. Brian just said the answer is deep within. I am sure Chris did not go asking you, well, should I be this and should I be that? No, He took the time. He sat down in silence to find that purpose. Purpose takes time. It's rest.
Yes. So I think I would give another. Rudyard Kipling said, "Trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances for their doubting too." So you that's the first thing. You have to trust yourself. You know, one of the things that I actually want to know, and this is a very, very personal question, is that is there a book that you could suggest for us, like off the top of your head, that you're like, you guys go out and read this, and you know, it helped me just a little bit. You know, maybe that one little thought, that takeaway. Is there any book that you have?
This is going to sound cliched, right? But in my context, it was somebody encouraged me. One of the books somebody encouraged me to read was the Bible.
Okay.
And the second one, so if you're secular, the second one was a book called As a Man Thinketh by William J. That was the starting point for me, that As a Man Thinketh. And then you continue reading. There's Acres of Diamond. Then Malcolm Gladwell has a book called What the Dog Saw. If you want to get a perspective on life, that is a good book. But I would advise young people to read. Start with As a Man Thinketh.
Yes. I you know, I want to really thank you for that, as in that's actually been a habit that I've had now, you know, to what are the little pieces that build the man, you know, and I think that the books that you read are so monumental to that. So thanks for that. That's actually my takeaway. I've actually just added that into a list for me. So I know, Melissa, that we are a little bit over with respect to the time, and maybe I don't know if there's any other question that we could do quickly, and then I suppose, you know, we could wrap up. Yes. I don't know if there's any other question.
I mean, I haven't seen any other questions at the moment, but what I can say is encourage everyone on this call to definitely become a part of our Titan community, because again, we are all responsible for curating our story. I mean, there are loads of people that we all in a tribe, iron sharpens iron. And you know, the book that Brian is speaking about, As a Man Thinketh, it speaks about we are mind. That is that's ultimately what it speaks about. We are mind. And how can we be every single thing that was spoken about today without a tribe that holds us accountable? Yes, it's okay that we can do a lot of things with reflection is important and it's necessary, but there's also room for that tribe to really and truly level up. We do nothing of consequence by ourselves. So join the Titan Talks community on Facebook. And you know what, stay tuned for our next week. We have Ayanna McClean, again affiliated on the road to the Olympics. So we definitely be hearing about her March 13th, again, same time, 9 a.m. to 9:30. Brian is smiling because he knows Ayanna well, and he just knows the type of conversation that's going to be had with Chris, Ayanna, and myself next week. Yeah. It's an amazing way to start your Saturday, guys. I hope that every single person is filled with energy and ready to make a change. Do something right now. Even if you go Google the book As a Man Thinketh, do something now. Commit it to yourself. All right, guys? Everybody, I would just like you to type 1 in the chat if you're going to go and buy that book. Google that book that Brian spoke about. Type 1. Type 1 in the chat. Yes, Alicia. Type 1 again. Who else? Nobody is going to access the book.
As a Man Thinketh. Google it.
As a Man Thinketh.
Yes.
It's
a great book. Read it.
Yeah.
But I mean, change your life.
So I mean, so again, I was tasked with the introduction of you, Mr. Lewis, Brian, and I'm ending with tremendous thanks. You know, I have known you, and you've known me since Blackman's private school.
Correct.
You know, when I was in primary school.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you've known me for 30 years, possibly. and I want to thank you. You know, you since that time you've been a constant, just, you know, and you know how people come in and out. And at one point in time, I remember me struggling a little bit with funding, right before the Olympics, and I needed to go to a training camp in New York, and you're like, Chris, we got you on this one, you know. So
Right.
I want to thank you tremendously, not only for the what you've done personally for me, but also just here today, kind of giving the background to the story. Because again, as I said before, that adds hues and colors and dimensions and complexities to people. And, you know, you are a very, very interesting person, you know. And it's like,
that's
yes,
like,
exactly.
I love that title from
Exactly.
the Maverick of Sport, raising the bar for us in the Caribbean. We're so grateful, so grateful.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you, Brian.
Thank you for
everything this
having
morning.
me. I appreciate it. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Yes.
We learned so much this morning. Wow.
Right. Okay,
Guys,
on to you, Mel. Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much. Titan Talks next week, March 13th, 9 a.m. Ayanna McClean. Thank you guys for spending Saturday with us. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.